Welcome in, welcome back to the Touchdown Black and Gold vlog, where we examine, discuss, celebrate, and honor all things college football across the entire college football landscape, but with a special emphasis on our beloved black and gold squads of the Missouri Tigers and the Iowa Hawkeyes. Great to be back with you. I have a very special episode today lined up for you on the Touchdown Black and Gold vlog. I'm your host, Blair Parks. Holla at you, boy. It's great to be here. And as always, before I move ahead, thank you all for your continued support, your attention, your viewership. This would not be possible at all without all of you, the Black and Gold family, and college football fans alike. You are all welcome here. It has been an absolute pleasure sharing my passion and love of college football with you. So thank you for everything you've done for the channel. I always encourage and appreciate any likes, shares, ratings, subscriptions, comments. Feel free. Let's keep the ball rolling on a great thing and get the word out there. And we are absolutely continuing to grow. The channel has picked up a lot of momentum here near the end of the season, and great things are on the horizon for the rest of the offseason and for kickoff of the 2022 college football season. Well, then again, it's great to be back with you. Have a very special episode lined up for you, as I mentioned. But before that, here we are. The dog days of winter are upon us. We continue our college football slumber and hibernation. It's been tough to this point, but just take solace in knowing very soon spring practice and spring games will be upon us. And right now, just to help you get through, to kind of quelch some of your fanship and sports fandom, there is one big event happening right now to kind of help pass the time, and two are on the horizon. Currently, the Winter Olympics are going on in Beijing, China. I believe in 2 weeks, the Daytona 500 kicks off, so the start of the NASCAR season for all you motorsports fans. And yes, also, a week from today, the Super Bowl's on, between the LA Rams and the Cincinnati Bengals. Blah, 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 blah. Cindy and Scott are newlyweds. Whoopity-doo. If you've watched some of the past episodes, I've not hid that I am not a big NFL fan. I am not anti-NFL by any means. That is not correct. That is fake news. But absolutely and obviously, I have a preference. Me, 10 times out of 10, each and every day, twice on Sundays, I'm going to pick a college football game over an NFL game. And that's just the way that it's been for me for several years, if not going on decades now. I just have my preference. And to back that up, I had to go back and really see and do some research. What is the last Super Bowl that I've watched the majority of? And by that, I don't mean from start to finish. I mean 2.5, 3 quarters. And it's been quite a while. I went back and I checked. That was going back to the 2014 Super Bowl between the Peyton Manning-led Denver Broncos against the Seattle Legion of Boom defense. And the reason why I watched that one is it just brought me a lot of pleasure seeing Peyton Manning fold and come away with the loss, to tell you the truth. So it was absolutely a dominant game by Seattle in that defense, and seeing Peyton Manning struggle, I think it was best summarized by the halftime show that year. If you recall, it was the Red Hot Chili Peppers, and I think lead singer Anthony Kiedis absolutely wrapped it up perfectly by saying, Peyton Manning, he gave it away, gave it away, gave it away now. Give it away, give it away, give it away now. That's why I absolutely watched that Super Bowl. And before that, going all the way back to the 2009 Super Bowl between the Arizona Cardinals and the Pittsburgh Steelers, that one I watched the majority of because the halftime show was my guy, my band, Bruce Springsteen and the E Street Band, and that epic power slide he did during the halftime show. And also the game between the Cardinals and the Steelers, it was okay. So it's not that I go out of my way not to watch the Super Bowl. It's just not a priority for me. It's just not. But this year I think I am going to try to watch a little bit more of it, because just 3 full seasons ago, what Joe Burrow did for LSU, the miracle, magical season, one of the best offensive seasons we've ever seen at college football history. He has the Bengals back in the Super Bowl, the first time since 1988. Only his second year in the NFL. So I definitely will be watching a little bit of Joe Burrow, because it reminds me of that season he had, and it absolutely has carried into the National Football League. So I don't think me admitting that to you, the Black and Gold family, sports fans alike, college football fans, I don't necessarily think that qualifies me losing my sports fan card or my man card. I'm just being honest. And to be even further honest, I actually have watched a lot more of the Puppy Bowl since we had kids. So that's what I'll probably be watching a lot next Sunday, as well as the old Puppy Bowl. But anyway, so Super Bowl is right on the horizon, a week from today, for you fans who need something to help pass the time. But today, the episode that I have lined up for you is how do we correctly, safely, and fairly expand the college football playoff. That is a hot topic going on right now. There seems to be a lot of deadlock between conference commissioners and Notre Dame AD. I believe his name is Jack Swarbrick. So this is my proposal. How do I think it can be fixed and solved? But before I go any further, I do need to give a quick shout out to my guy, Chase Jackson. 2 episodes ago, during my national championship game review and recap, I did present to you, the Black and Gold family, after Georgia's victory. There was really one of 2 narratives that kind of came from the game. One was that Georgia simply was a better team, and the better team won on the field. It was decided. The other one was, well, Georgia was the benefactor of a couple of big-time injuries to the Alabama football team, being they were already without wide receiver John Mechie, and late in the first quarter, stud wide receiver Jamison Williams went down with an injury and did not return. So that was the other narrative, that Georgia kind of backdoored their way into a national championship game. I think that one is absolutely false. I believe the better team won, and my guy Chase Jackson, once again, I always appreciate any comments, any feedback, questions, concerns, definitely agreed with me and said the better teams, they find a way to win, because Georgia had freshmen at their positions as well, at wide receiver and at tight end. So thank you very much, Chase. I appreciate you. Much love. Shout out. So feel free. This is once again, it doesn't matter if you root for Missouri or Iowa. This is a safe spot for all college football fans, and I encourage any comments, feedback, questions, concerns, anything. So feel free. Thank you much, Chase. I appreciate you, and I can't wait to hear from you again. So let's go into how do we solve this playoff expansion conundrum. But first, let's go through what the current hurdles are. Why are these commissioners and this AD deadlocked? How come they cannot agree? But right now, it's evident they are disagreeing, or they agree to disagree. That is what's going on. So let me share with you what some of these roadblocks and hurdles have been to this point. But before that, for some of you who this is new news to you, let me rewind and do this timeline for you. Late June, early July is when we first heard that expanding the playoff was on the table, that this was being absolutely something that was being discussed at the college football commissioner level. And then shortly after that, that was confirmed. So it was absolutely true that they were discussing how do we expand the playoff, late June, early July. So at that point, when it was confirmed, I was one of those, like most, who believed that this was a question of when this was going to happen, not if. Then fast forward about a month, at the end of July, during SEC media days, that bombshell was dropped on us about, initially a report came out, I believe from the Houston Chronicle, that they had word that Oklahoma and Texas were officially trying or looking into joining the SEC. And at the time, that question was asked to Greg Sankey, the SEC commissioner, but at that time, he neither confirmed or denied that report. So then it became basically assumption and very something that you could say was accurate and true, since there was no sense of, like I said, confirmation or denial. And then a couple weeks later, it was something that was confirmed that OU and Texas were trying to join the SEC officially. And eventually they both were added, so they will be coming to the SEC. We still don't know what year that they are going to officially join, but that is happening. And then you fast forward about another month to August. At that point, that is where the new Rebel Alliance against the Empire, cue the Imperial March music, the alliance, and that was between the ACC, the Big Ten, and the Pac-12. Those three commissioners came together and said they are going to be unified together as far as issues that were going to be arising on the college football horizon. And one of those was, it was very apparent and obvious that they were going to be together voting on how do we correctly, fairly, and safely expand the college football playoff. And I say the Empire because that is in reference to the SEC. Yes, they are the best college football conference, but with the addition of Oklahoma and Texas, and then ESPN currently has the rights to the college football playoff broadcasts, that it was kind of very evident that they were trying to take over. They were trying to improve their sphere of influence. So that's what the alliance came together to block that, to have an equal say. And I remember when this alliance was first announced, old Paul Feinbaum, the mouth of the South, came on and said on his show that, yeah, this is an absolute joke. What a weak response. You know, they didn't say anything that they're trying to accomplish, which that was true. But it's evident now that what they're doing is putting a halt or a timeout, pump the brakes to whatever the SEC wants to do. So it absolutely has turned the tide. So it is a huge development in this moving forward. So that's the timeline. And currently they are deadlocked. They have met several times since August to try to come to an agreement. Has not happened yet. The hurdles to expansion is, first of all, how many teams? Is it 12 teams? Is it 8? Or do we keep the current 4-team format? Another one is how many automatic bids, or what is the access to the playoff? Is it primarily still going to favor the haves versus the have-nots, the power conferences? Well, will the non-Power 5 conferences have a legitimate chance to join? That's another one of the hurdles for discussion. Another one is how many teams can participate from each conference, to where some conferences have made it public that they don't want to have a cap. That, hey, if 4 teams from this one conference are the best teams in the nation, 4 of the top 12 best teams, there shouldn't be a cap. Or you shouldn't only have 2 or 3 teams max from a conference. That's something else that's being discussed. Another big one is the health and safety concerns of the players, to where this is one that absolutely is legitimate. The more games we play, the more chance for legitimate injury and wear and tear on these young men's bodies. So that's another thing that they're trying to hash out. Other things is the athletics versus academics. The more games we have potentially, the more in-class time that these young men could miss, because first and foremost, they are student athletes, as I do that in air quotes. Another hurdle to college football playoff expansion. Another one is how NIL, name, image, and likeness, plays into this. Is how is that going to sway the participants in college football expansion? To where is that's basically going to be the haves versus the have-nots, because it absolutely has been used lately during signing days as a recruiting tool, which it was something it was not supposed to be used as. And I promise you, the Black and Gold family, I will have a special episode on NIL in the near future. Now that I've kind of seen what it has done to the landscape, I can now give you a little bit more positive feedback, in my opinion, on it. So NIL is another one. What can we do to make it fair? And the last one is, kind of mentioned this, the TV contracts and broadcasts. Because right now, ESPN would have the rights to this. They own the SEC network, to where basically, hey, we're a capitalist society and nation. You know, it's good to have competition, to where the other networks say, hey, we should be able to bid on the contracts and the rights. All because Fox would all absolutely like a piece of this, so would CBS. So that is another major hurdle to college football expansion. Now, most of these I just mentioned, I will absolutely cover in my proposal. For example, what can we do to limit the health and safety, injury issues? I have that. That will be involved in my proposal here that's coming soon. So most of these I will address, but some I just don't quite know yet. Those being how to fix NIL, and then the athletics for academics. I mean, these young men have to take responsibility if they're going to be missing class due to more games. Ultimately, it's on them to get their homework in and their tests. And the last one is TV contracts and broadcasts. I'm not a businessman. I'm in no position to speak on that. But the other major hurdles, I will absolutely propose to you. This is how we can solve them and fix them. All right. So my proposal, let's move into the next portion of the episode, is, to me, the expansion should begin at the beginning of the 2026 season. I know that's years away, but the current contract expires at the end of the 2025 season. So then the national championship game will be early in 2026. So we wait 4 years for this to happen, but that'll help get all of the ducks in a row to do this right, do it the right way. So that's when I believe that my proposal should begin. But the first thing to make this fair is, I say we need to fix the problem of expansion, of conference expansion first. So that's where my proposal begins. I believe that we should create 6 power conferences across the nation. And I'm going to share with you right now what those 6 power conferences would look like. So these 6 power conferences, you're going to have 14 teams in each conference. So there will be a lot of realignment. And what I have done, how I've put these together. Now, yes, they might ruffle some feathers of you folks watching. Feel free to comment. Let me know what you think. Agree, disagree, and why. That you're going to have 6 14-team power conferences, and it's going to be based on regionality and natural, ongoing, and historical rivalries. Simply, if you look at a map of the United States and you follow along with these 6 power conferences, they're going to make sense, and also based on historic, like I said, historic, ongoing, and natural rivalries. And so what I've done, I have added a lot of the non-Power 5 teams. I have now basically brought them up. They have gotten raises to the Power 6 ranks. So these are some of the teams that have proven over time to be a little bit more successful. You know, teams like Cincinnati, UCF, Boise State, teams that have shown they can play with the big boys. So they are absolutely going to get a promotion to the Power 6 ranks. So here we go. Let's go ahead and start off with the 6 conferences. Okay? Now, I'm not going to list every single team that's going to be in these conferences. I'm simply going to add teams that you would lose and teams that would be added to these conferences. So the easiest one, let's start with the Pac-12 out west. The Pac-12, so this is what's going to happen. First of all, you're going to lose Colorado. They are no longer in your conference. but you would add BYU, which is makes absolute sense. They're a rival with Utah in the state of Utah. You also add Boise State, which would be another regional rivalry for Utah and BYU. And you also add San Diego State. They're there in California, major city, major market. They have success at football, but especially in college basketball. So those are the three teams you add: BYU, Boise State, San Diego State, giving you 14 teams. Next would be the Big 12. And this one does go through a lot of changes, but the Big 12 now will look more like the Big 12 of old. So the teams that you lose in the Big 12, you will lose Iowa State and West Virginia. Those are the two teams you lose. Now you're going to have to add a lot to get to 14. So these are the teams you add back or initially into the Big 12 conference. You would add, coming back is Texas A&M, coming back is Missouri, coming back is Colorado. So the old Big 12, they kind of come back together. But now you add Houston, you add SMU, and you also add Arkansas. That's right, more of the old Great A conference or that conference. Those rivalries are back. So now what you have is you have certain states that you really have on lockdown. And I forgot to mention that. So the Pac-12, with what they add and what they currently have, they would have a footprint in California, Oregon, Washington, Utah, Idaho, and Arizona. And with the Big 12, when you add these teams and bring them back together, you really have locked down the Texas market, Oklahoma, Arkansas, Colorado, Missouri, and Kansas. So once again, the regionality and the rivalries, they come back. Missouri and Kansas, Arkansas and Missouri have the annual rivalry in the SEC. So those things continue. So, and also it just brings back the regionality. And that was really the main thing behind, my concept of this, is to bring it back. So there's your 14 teams in the Big 12, and each one of these conferences now have their own spheres of influence in the country. So the next is my home conference, the Big 10. So there will be some changes in the Big 10 as well. To get to 14 teams, this is what happens in the Big 12. The Big 10, In the Big 10, we lose Rutgers, Maryland, and Penn State. That's right, Penn State leaves the Big 10. And this is what we add to get to our 14 teams in the Big 10. We add Iowa State, a natural rival with Iowa in the Hawkeye State. Makes total sense. They play every year right now anyway. We also add Cincinnati. They're an Ohio natural rival with Ohio State. And we also add Notre Dame. And I'll get back to why Notre Dame and some of these independents are forced to join a conference. So then Notre Dame makes total sense. They're in Indiana. They can play Purdue every year, Indiana. So those are the three teams that we add in the Big 10. Iowa State, Cincinnati, Notre Dame. So then the Big 10, their sphere of influence would be Ohio, Michigan, Minnesota, Wisconsin, Iowa, Indiana, Nebraska, and Illinois. So every conference, once again, has their own area of influence. That's what I want. That's what we need to have. Now, the SEC definitely goes through some changes. Hopefully this doesn't get any of you up in arms. You want to form a mob and come at me, but feel free. Let me know what you think. So the SEC, some of these I've already mentioned. To get to your 14 teams, you do lose Texas A&M, you lose Missouri and Arkansas, but you also lose South Carolina and Kentucky. So bear with me. So these are the teams that you add to the SEC. You add Florida State, natural rival with Florida. You add Georgia Tech, rival every year with Georgia. You're in the state of Georgia. And you also add a couple of non-Power 5 teams because there's recent success in your region. You add Memphis, big market team, good basketball brand. They've had some success. They've beaten a few SEC teams in recent past on the gridiron, and they have. You add UAB. yes, a Conference USA squad, but they've won several conference titles in their history. A brand new stadium down there in Birmingham. You're in Alabama. Makes total sense with Alabama and Auburn. And you also add Louisiana, the Raging Cajuns, their natural rival for LSU in the state of Louisiana. So you have the states locked down of Alabama, rich Florida, Louisiana, Mississippi, Tennessee, and Georgia. That is your area of influence, your sphere for the SEC, getting to 14 teams. Next is the ACC. Now, this conference goes through the most dramatic of changes, and they do, but bear with me. So the ACC, to get you to 14 teams, you lose Pittsburgh, you lose Boston College, Syracuse, Georgia Tech, who I've already mentioned, and Florida State, who I mentioned as well. But you add South Carolina, makes total sense. It's in the state of South Carolina, so is Clemson in the ACC. They play each other every year. So South Carolina goes to the ACC. So does Kentucky. They're a rival with Louisville. Great basketball rivalry. They play good football. So Kentucky comes to the ACC. Also, Western Kentucky. Have all those Kentucky teams together. Western Kentucky has some success on the gridiron, but they have numerous victories in the NCAA men's basketball tournament. Good basketball school are the Hilltoppers. You add UCF, Central Florida, and Gus Malzahn. And lastly, you add the University of South Florida, USF, there in Tampa. So you really have a good footprint in the talent-rich state of Florida. So at that point, the ACC primarily has the states of Virginia, North and South Carolina, Kentucky, and Florida. Makes total sense. So that leads us to the new conference that I've created. And the name of this one, I mean, there was lots of options. I could have called it the Colonial. I could have called it the Northeast. But what I did, I just chose the Big East. Because once upon a time, we did have a Big East conference, and a lot of these teams were in said conference. So primarily, these are going to be teams located in the New England states. This would be the new conference that's created. And here's the teams for my new 14-team Big East Conference, the Big East. That's what I'm going to call it for now. We have Penn State, Pittsburgh, so right there you have the Pennsylvania rivalry. You have West Virginia. The backyard brawl is back between Pitt and West Virginia. You add Marshall, who's there in West Virginia. They have a good brand. They're rivalries, so you add Marshall as well. You add Appalachian State. Plays great football. They have numerous titles at the FCS level, a good brand. You also add Syracuse. You add Buffalo from the MAC, because they are the furthest team to the east in the MAC. And you also add Army. So right there, Army drops their independent status. And then you have 3 teams in the Empire State. Syracuse, Buffalo, and Army. They're at West Point. Also, you add Rutgers from New Jersey. You add Navy and Maryland. So right there you have 2 rivals in the great state of Maryland. You add Boston College. UMass drops their independent status. They join this new conference, as does Liberty. So there in Massachusetts, you have BC and UMass, natural rivals. And you have Liberty. Now, they're the only Virginia team in this new conference, but they dropped their independent status as well. And they've had absolute big success recently. And the last couple times they've made the NCAA tournament, the men's tournament, they've had victories. They've advanced. So that is my new Power 6 conferences. And the Big East, they have locked down the Northeast region. They have the states of Pennsylvania, West Virginia, New York, Massachusetts, Maryland, New Jersey, North Carolina with Appalachian State, and Virginia being Liberty. So that's my new Power 6 conferences. That's how I would create and how I would realign them. Let me know what you think. I appreciate any likes, shares, subscriptions, comments, ratings. Let me know what you think. Agree, disagree. I've nailed it out of the park, grand slam, or check swing, or absolute 3 swings and misses. Let me know what you think. So the next part of this is, now that we have conference expansion taken care of, now how do we qualify and participate? How do these teams get to what I propose to the expanded college football playoff? First of all, the teams. I think a 12-team playoff is spot on. So that's how many teams I believe we should expand to. Now, as I mentioned, these 6 power conference teams, the champion of each conference gets an automatic bid. So there's 6 spots taken automatically. And then the thing is, with these power conferences, now that we have 14 teams in 6 conferences, we absolutely do away with divisions. So you have to play 9 conference games. Sorry, SEC, you're going to have to do it. Some conferences already are doing that. The Pac-12, the Big 12, and the Big 10. So having 14 teams, no divisions, 9 conference games, I know that sounds like a lot, but this is what we can do. And I further broke this down as far as scheduling, because we've seen this happen too many times that it might be 4 years or more between playing one opponent. And that's what we see a lot. And that just can't happen. So what I propose is every team in these power conferences, you play 3 teams every year. Those are your protected rivalries. So for example, I broke this down. Let's say Iowa. When you add Iowa State, Notre Dame, Cincinnati, the 3 teams that Iowa would play every year would have to be Iowa State, because they play every year already in the non-conference, Iowa State, Minnesota for Floyd of Rosedale, and Wisconsin for the Heartland Trophy. So they would play those 3 teams every year and vice versa. And Missouri, what they would do, they would play Arkansas, because they play every year right now in the SEC. They would reignite that hated rivalry with Kansas, so they would play Kansas every year, and also Colorado. That would be their 3 teams they would play every year and vice versa. And if you do that, then you would play every conference team every 3rd year. If you do a home and home, so at least once during the normal recruiting cycle. If kids leave a year early, you're going to play every team in your conference at least once. That's what it would work out to. So that's what we should do. That's my proposal. 3 teams, protected rivalries every year, no divisions. And now the other thing, another automatic qualifier, is the highest ranked non-Power 5 conference winner, conference champion, gets an automatic bid. Basically what happens right now. So right there we have 7 automatic bids that are guaranteed. Now when I say non-Power 5, because we do pluck some of their best teams, they could absolutely expand and regroup and rebrand. So maybe then there's only 4 non-Power 4 conferences left potentially. So that would be 7 automatic bids right there. Now, another thing that I believe should be an automatic bid, and we could have seen this happen this year. We were this close. So let's say if you have a non-Power 5 team that their last ranking, they finished ranked in the top 12, but not a conference championship winner, they should also get an automatic bid. And we could have seen that this year. If Houston would have defeated Cincinnati, first of all, Cincinnati would have never then gotten into the college football playoff, but they actually wouldn't even have been playing in a New Year's Six bowl game, because you have to be the highest ranked conference championship winner. So let's say Houston, in my proposal, my new format, let's say Houston would have beaten Cincinnati. Would they have jumped up in the polls? Absolutely. I don't think they would have jumped Cincinnati, but then my format, Houston would get the automatic bid as the highest ranked non-Power 5 conference champion, but Cincinnati would have still finished in the top 12, so they would have gotten an at-large bid, auto bid as well. So every year we could have potentially 8 automatic bids. That's the max. 7 every year guaranteed, but 8 could be the overall automatic bid number, leaving either 5 or 4 at-large bids in my new format, what I propose. So now as far as independence, during my new conferences that I just shared with you, Notre Dame in the Big Ten, BYU in the Pac-12, Army in the new Big East, and also with Liberty, because to participate in the new college football expansion, my format, my proposal, you have to be a member of a conference. You cannot be an independent. Sorry, Notre Dame, the independent Notre Dame rule no longer applies. So independents, you've got to join a conference. No more auto bid if you finish in the top 6. Not going to happen anymore. It's not fair. Got to join a conference. Next comes down to the amount of games, kind of getting back to the health and safety issues potentially. And I've already gone through how many teams, how many automatic bids. So some of the hurdles that these commissioners are going through, I've answered for you. So next is schedule. I believe keeping it at a 12-game regular season is okay, but going to 11, I am totally fine with that. Either way, whether you keep it at 12 games in the regular season or you do a -1 to 11, this is what we need to do. You need to kick off the last weekend in August, just like high schools do. Granted, I love the Labor Day weekend kickoff. It's a holiday already. It puts icing on the cake. But if you kick off 1 week earlier, and right now we're seeing a lot of week 0 games anyway kick off that weekend. If everybody kicked off that weekend, you could work in 2 buys. So every team would have 2 weeks off to get healthy, to rest, and recoup. So that's when I think we should kick off. Whether you do 11 or 12 games, kick off 1 week earlier. So then you would have more time to rest. So injuries, but potentially you could reduce that risk a little bit. Now, as far as if you play 12 or 11 games, there's some other things you have to do to participate or qualify. In the non-conference schedule, you must play a fellow Power 5 conference team. So a Big Ten team must play an SEC team, or ACC must play Pac-12. You must play at least one Power 6 team to qualify. And if you're a non-Power 5 team, let's say like a Colorado State, if you want to play Colorado every year, that's how you would qualify. So everybody has to play at least one Power 6 conference team in the non-conference portion of their schedule. You have to. The other thing, if you're going to keep it at 12 games, there's so much money being made already on college football, but so much more will be made off this new format. If you keep it 12 games, I think it's something you must do. You must play at least one FCS squad to spread the love, spread the wealth. These are the teams that really depend on getting these paydays to take victories. So I think you must play at least one FCS squad if we're going to keep it at 12 games. And if we scale back to 11, I think that should be eliminated, but you still have to play one Power 6 conference team in the non-conference to qualify. No more scheduling 2 or 3 cupcakes. You can't do that anymore. That's also why we need to start this in 2026. That gives these schools, conferences, plenty of time to redo their schedules and reshape, go back to the drawing board, and take care of these. So that's what I believe in. And now, finally, the cap on the number of teams. I went back and forth on this one because right now we're looking at 7 automatic bids, maybe 8, as I already mentioned. But I think the cap is 3. So a conference can have no more than 3 teams in the expanded 12-team format. So let me go ahead and share with you what this year's 12-team playoff would have looked like. And I'm assuming that these teams are in these newly aligned conferences, And I already checked. All of them did play at least one other Power 6 opponent during the non-conference. Not all of them played at least one FCS team, but for the most part, this is what it would have looked like. So let me share this with you. Once again, feel free, comment, like, share, subscribe. Let me know what you think about, my rules for participation and qualification into the expanded 12-team format, my proposal. So this is what we would have had. The 1 seed would have been Alabama from the SEC. 2 would have been Michigan from the Big Ten. Now, granted, you don't necessarily have to agree with me how I seeded these. That doesn't really matter for argument's sake for this portion, but this is the 12 teams that I think would have made it. Feel free. You can either agree or disagree on that, but don't pay much attention to the seeding. That doesn't really matter. That's secondary. So we have Alabama 1 from the SEC, Michigan 2 from the Big Ten, Baylor 3 from the Big 12, Georgia would be the 4 seed, an at-large from the SEC. 5 would have been Cincinnati, an at-large from the Big Ten because they joined the Big Ten in my new alignment. 6 would be Utah, the Pac-12 champions. 7 would be Notre Dame, another at-large from the Big Ten. So there's the 3 from the Big Ten. They're maxed out. 8 would be Pitt, the Big East. They'd be the Big East conference champions in realignment. 9 would be Wake Forest. They would have been your ACC champions. 10 would have been Oklahoma State, an at-large from the Big 12. 11 would have been BYU, an at-large from the Pac-12. They were 5-0 in the regular season against the Pac-12. They finished 10-2, and they had a victory over conference champion Utah. And 12 would be, the last at-large would be Ole Miss. That would be the 3rd team from the SEC. So right there, I mean, we have a good grab bag and mixture of teams from conferences. So that's where we would have been if this would have played out. And actually then Cincinnati, I just kind of realized they would have been the non-Power 5, or it could have been Houston. So let's say Houston wins the American Athletic, Cincinnati's in the Big Ten at this point. Houston would be there. At that point, you probably would have to eliminate, I would say, BYU. So that's what this year's playoff would have looked like. It would have been those teams. Good teams. And it would have been very competitive, I believe, if you have those teams in the playoff. So how this would play out on the field, this is the last portion of today's episode. Thank you for staying with me. Is the top 4 seeds would have a first round bye. Seeds 5 through 8 would host on campus. And I love the idea of on-campus games. So seeds 5 through 8 would host at home seeds 9 through 12 in the first round. Then in the second round, the top 4 seeds would host the remaining seeds left. And those top 4, you could host them on campus if you wanted to, or you could have those in the hosting team's conference championship venue. So Alabama could play whoever in Atlanta, or Michigan would have played whoever in Indianapolis. And you would know that in advance. You'd say, okay, no matter who we play, we're going to be hosting. So let's go ahead and get these venues reserved. Let's do that. So play at home or play in your conference championship venue. You could do that. And then after that, your 4 remaining teams, you would reseed. If there were some big-time upsets going into the semifinals, you would have to reseed. And then those games could be at the revolving sites they are right now. The Cotton Bowl and Peach Bowl one year, the Rose Bowl and Sugar Bowl another. So the semifinals would still be hosted by those bowl sites after you reseed the teams. And then you would have the 2 remaining in the national championship game. So that's perfect. Now, the timeline for this, it would be difficult, but I think you could drag this out into early February. I have always dreamed of having a super weekend. You have Super Bowl Sunday, and you could have Super Saturday, the college football championship game on Saturday. What a weekend that would be for sports fans. And you would have to do that. Take a week off in between, Yes, academics might struggle, but these are grown adults. These are young men, young adults. They can be responsible to make up their work and have a super football weekend. So that's my proposal. That's what I believe we can do to correctly, safely, and fairly expand the college football playoff. Let me know what you think. Once again, I always encourage your participation. Like, share, subscribe, comment. Let me know what you think. And I'll be back in a couple weeks. I've got some really fun special episodes on deck lined up for you. But until then, take care of yourselves, stay healthy, enjoy the Super Bowl, enjoy your families, your times away. Until we meet again, take care of yourself. Peace, love, prosperity, and thank you for joining me on today's special episode of the Touchdown Black and Gold vlog. I'll talk to you soon. Bye.